Welcome to another edition of the Pacers Pride Podcast. I'm your host, Cody Emerson, and alongside me, as always, my co-host, Dylan Deanhart. Coming to you guys just about roughly an hour and a half shortly after the Pacers season finally came to an end at the hands of the Boston Celtics. Pacers got swept 4-0. It wasn't that great of a series to watch. Pacers, we're going to dive into it here in a second, but just like we said, Pacers got eliminated, and just the Pacers hung in there for most of the series, and we're going to dive into it. Just kind of some small things here went wrong for the Pacers, and that was the main reason that they weren't able to capitalize in any of these games. But Dylan, I guess let's dive straight into it. Your thoughts just on the series as a whole against Boston.
The series was overall very disappointing. I knew most people came into the series thinking the Pacers would put up more than a fight. I don't think a lot of people.
I picked Boston in 6.
I unfortunately called the Boston sweep.
Props to you for calling it.
Yeah, I didn't want to be right, but turns out
you're also being realistic.
Yeah, and it was a hard series to watch. Offense really wasn't clicking at all throughout the series. We scored above 100 points once coming in the last game. Granted, we did play very good defense. We didn't really get blown out in any of these games. The largest margin of deficit was 10 points in the game one. But we hung in. If the games were just a half, I think Pacers would be up in this series by now. But the second half, and I think 3 out of the 4 games just killed the Indiana Pacers. Really, I think there was a stat they put up at the end of the game 4 where in the last 6 minutes of all of the games, the Pacers had shot 28% from the field, whereas Boston shot 52% from the field. It's just offensive execution late in games has been what killed the Pacers, and Boston just has too many playmakers that can go out in late in games and just get the job done, whereas the Pacers kind of fumbled, didn't really know what to do on the offense, and really couldn't find any consistent execution late in games, which is what killed the Pacers and was what led to this sweep. So
yeah, it was the main difference. Obviously, Celtics knew how to close. They looked like the veteran team that had kind of been there before and knew how to close out games. And the Pacers kind of continued this trend that it seems like when they were going through this stretch of the difficult Western Conference road trip that they had, and even a little bit before that, and you can even probably take it back to when Vic went down. They just could not close out games that well. They struggled to find that guy. They wanted it to be Bojan, I believe. Bojan or
it's been from like Bojan to Wesley to Tyreek.
They just each guy or each game it was someone different, and there was no consistent guy that you could put the ball in his hands and say, "Go win us this game." And I think that's what ultimately killed the Pacers, and just late game, just execution was not good at all. I remember we talking a little bit before the show. This past game, today, we saw the last 10 minutes was basically just. Granted, Tyreek had, and I'm gonna first off tip my hat to Tyreek because he played. There were some bad moments from him, but for the most part, he kept the Pacers in this series in most of these games. So hats off to him. He kind of. We're not gonna talk free agency this episode, but we're gonna talk it next week. So maybe changed my thinking a little bit. But for the most part, it was just Tyreek Sabonis pick and roll in this past game, and it was Tyreek. He made some bad passes. There, with the good, you get the bad with Tyreek, and so it was just him not. He was missing shots right at the basket, and that was the Pacers' downfall in this game. They could not hit a shot at the they would get to the basket perfectly fine. DC, Wesley Matthews Tyreek, Sabonis, everyone would get to the basket just fine. It's just that they would not be able to finish at the basket, and that's one of the main reasons why they were unable to win this one. But if you look just at the series as a whole, just it was not a good performance. I'm looking at specifically Game 3, Sabonis had a good game, but we kind of hinted at it yesterday when we were on our friend's radio show. When we talked about the playoffs a little bit, and we talked about this series, we talked about Sabonis not being able to be the kind of impact player that he has been. We saw last year in Cleveland he kind of struggled as well, so I don't know what this means going forward, because they have Miles locked up, and Miles, speaking of Miles, gave us another postseason dunk up for the ages, just putting Gordon Hayward on an absolute poster, and hyping up Bankers Life Fieldhouse today. If you haven't seen it, just go search the internet for it. It almost broke Twitter today when it happened. But going back to Sabonis, Dylan, I don't want to say this makes the Pacers, just because they're going to have a decision to make in the near future with Sabonis in terms of, do we lock him up and try and continue rolling with this Sabonis-Turner combination, because Miles is locked up, but I don't know if a team would want to maybe trade for that contract or not, but the Pacers have a decision to make with Sabonis, and his playoff the past 2 years in the playoffs have not kind of helped his case, I guess would be the best way to describe it.
Yeah, but I mean, you can't overlook the regular season he's had.
Yeah.
He's been up there at least in the conversation of sixth man of the year. I know he's
sixth man, most improved.
Yeah, he's not high on those lists, but he's at least
worth talking
making
about.
A case for it. And that might, I know we're not going to delve too much in free agency, but that might be a good thing for the Pacers. At least we can, at the very least, he could become a trade piece. I know most people like Sabonis over Turner. Granted, I think Turner's outperformed him at an overall season, I think, than Sabonis this year, which was a first, because I think last season Sabonis vastly outperformed Miles Turner. But it's going to be interesting, because this whole, whether or not we keep Sabonis, whether or not we get rid of Sabonis, could be hinged upon lots of different moves. This almost like half the roster is expired contracts, so I mean, it depends on what kind of direction that the team and the offense kind of goes. If they want those two big men kind of system that they had going for a while, I could certainly see them bringing back. But it's not like, I don't think Sabonis is on an expiring contract.
No.
So we at least have him from another year, but he also could be a trade piece coming in the next season, another like trade deadline, depending on the team's success. But I like Sabonis. I like the kind of backup big he gets. I think he needs to develop more of an outside shot. I think he's too reliant on the post game, which I know was a big reason why he didn't like OKC's, because they just forced him to be an outside shooter. But I would like to see his game kind of develop more along the lines of Miles Turner's.
Right.
And if that were the case, that would be the dream scenario, because we have two players that could be nearly identical to each other, one starting, one off the bench. But it'll be interesting to see, because I honestly have no idea what the direction Pritchard's going to take this team. So,
and another key thing to mention, especially in this game and in this series, we kind of have had you've had the theme all year of Doug McDermott playing amazing in away from Bankers Life. He was an absolute no-show in this series. And that resulted in him not even seeing the court in this closeout game.
He had 27 minutes total in the entire series. And
just was not able to find any sort of rhythm offensively or defensively with his shot.
He scored 6 points total.
Yeah,
in the first two games, 0 in the last two.
So, 6 points in 27 minutes, and I don't even probably want to know what his plus-minus was.
So he didn't play in games 3 and 4. in 2, he had a plus or -7, and in game 1, he had a +6, so a -1 total.
It wasn't terrible, but we kind of brought him in to be that back up to Bojan and be that elite three-point shooter coming off the bench. And credit to the Celtics, they, for the most part, took away Bojan in this series. Bojan scored around, I think, his usual 17, 18 points per game in this series, but he wasn't as impactful, I guess, as we've grown to seeing him.
None of the Pacers really stood out in any really single game. Maybe Tyreek in 3 and 4, but there was no single Pacer took over kind of game that
we have we saw last year. Bojan took over some games.
Magical.
And just with his 3-point shot, and he was getting more of his points from 2 this year, or this series against Boston. So credit Boston and credit Brad Stevens, Jason Tatum, and Jaylen Brown, and they phenomenal defenders out there. And also just another piece that we saw play that we didn't get to see in these first 3 games was Aaron Holiday. He only played, I think, like 5-6 minutes.
He got garbage time minutes, except for I think game 2. I think they gave him 6 in game 2.
He played a little bit in game 4, because I think they went small with Boston went small with Rozier and Kyrie out there.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's why Nate, I think, decided to throw.
He had 12 minutes total, and I don't think he scored. He scored a 2. He scored 2 points.
Aaron Holiday had 6 minutes in this game. But I get the matchup to kind of throw him out there and get some postseason experience, maybe. But between McDermott and Holiday we've talked a little bit about McMillan's rotations and the subs and riding hot hands or whatever in this series. And what do you just make of the way he used the entire roster in this?
It got questionable at some points. I know a lot of people harped on specifically game 3 when Tyreek was the main reason that he drug us back into this game. And then late in the fourth quarter, he pulled him for Bojan. And it was quoted that it was just a rotation decision, which, I mean, I understand that you have rotations and you've been sticking with them for a year. But I think in the playoffs, those just kind of go out the window. You ride the hot hand, you ride who's doing well. And I think Tyreek had the hot hand, and I liked kind of more what he did in game 4, where he kept Tyreek out there for, I think, majority of the fourth quarter. And he decided not to in game 3, and I think that could have played a reason as why we did not attempt or get closer than we did in the fourth. But again, it's just, I think McMillan got outcoached this entire series. He came out with a strong first half at times, but in the second half, Brad Stevens just had his number every single game. They would come out and just stomp the Pacers and establish why they're the better team. So,
yeah, it was just kind of interesting to watch some of the rotations, because I was kind of yelling at the TV especially in this past game. I think it was in the second quarter. The Celtics were going on a little bit of a run. Second or third quarter, I can't remember. But we had our bench out there. The Celtics were building the 7-9. It was close to being a double-digit lead before the Pacers came back and tied it up again. But McMillan was still riding with the bench, and the bench hasn't. Tyreek and Sabonis, they had, granted, Tyreek had 21 in this closeout game. Sabonis had 14, but up until this game, it had really only been Tyreek that had kind of shown up. Corey Joseph, I think, Kojo played.
I think Kojo played better than the box score would say.
Yeah, Kojo had a better series because it's been well documented, like the last month, his struggles as well. But he kind of played well, and we kind of saw, and I think this just goes down to playoff experience, maybe, and see or not throw guys who haven't been out there. But TJ Leaf had been playing really, really good basketball, and I'm really interested to see where he goes next season. I think he could potentially be our backup power forward going into next year. But we saw TJ not get any minutes as well. So
he did get minutes in the first game, but played not great.
It was just not consistent minutes is what I was trying to say. And because offensively, we know that TJ Leaf can give the Pacers some really great offense. But he's shown, I'd say he's shown improvement on the defensive end this year. I've really been, if it wasn't for the absolute insane play of Bojan when Vic went down with his injury, I'd probably give like the most improved, I guess, Pacer award or whatever.
I would give it to Miles personally, just because he's gone consistent.
There's no, I guess, wrong answer with it, but it was just I loved this. I was really hard on TJ. I know both of us kind of were,
especially after the summer league. But I mean, that was a summer league, and it's hard to criticize him for that.
We thought, oh, he's a veteran, basically a veteran of the summer league, going up against rookies and guys trying to make NBA rosters, and he was struggling a little bit, but he found his way this year. So we'll see where TJ goes. We're going to shift now and not talk about the playoffs. Just focus on, I guess, the entire season as a whole. The Pacers ended the year 48-34. Just, I think, a win better than last year.
I think it's the same record.
Or same record as last year. It was. Basically the records were identical. After. And especially, I just marvel at the fact that we had basically every night 6-7 guys scoring double figures. We were able to just come together as a team, especially after Vic went down. And we lost a 3 seed that we had, but that was expected, especially with the difficult schedule. But credit to Nate McMillan, credit to the coaching staff. But we kind of hinted at it a little bit yesterday. We would kind of like to see, I know, Dylan, you brought it up specifically, kind of maybe, not specifically a coaching change per se, but maybe just bring in a guy to kind of help with the offense a little bit.
I agree. I think we need more of an offensive mind, at least to alleviate McMillan of like such duties that he needs to focus on offense, because I don't think he's the greatest offensive mind in the NBA. Granted, I have no idea which assistant would be the best for this scenario, because I'm not as in tuned as the great offensive assistant minds in the NBA, but I think that would be a wise hire, just someone who can, I know this is going to be a dumb analogy, but Purdue basketball, Painter handles the defense, and then they had assistant coach Greg Gary, who's now at Mercer. He did all the offensive plays. He drew up all the offensive sets in the timeouts. He called the offensive plays, and that really worked for us. And I think McMillan could use someone similar to that, someone that just handles all of the offensive play calling duties, and just to see how that works. Granted, I understand that maybe firing McMillan this season would be a little bit of a jump on, or jumping the gun, but you have to think that he's on the hot seat next season. Just for I know people would say, "Oh, Victor Oladipo is out," but you still, it's hard to see, especially with this playoff series where he just was late on adjustments, especially with a coach like Brad Stevens just out coaching him by far. You have to think maybe there's someone out there that could be better. I know that firing him, and there's not the greatest backup option out there, because that's the big question. Like, well, if you fire McMillan, who are you going to hire? And that's a very, very good question, because I honestly couldn't tell you. I don't know who the best prospects out there are.
I'd be all in on, like, I know Mark Jackson probably doesn't.
I still like Mark Jackson, but I don't. It doesn't seem like he really wants to get back into coaching, or like Kenny Smith. But I don't know how that would work. But.
But I'm not as heavy on the fire McMillan train. I will say a little bit that he could be on the hot seat a little bit.
By the way, Clippers just took a 5-point lead on the Warriors with 3 minutes and 57 seconds to go.
Woo! Go Clippers.
This is just when we're recording this.
No,
so.
yeah, they.
I'm watching.
Hey, I mean, I don't blame you, but I wouldn't. Like I said, I'm not gonna be hitting the panic button on the Fire McMillan train, or whatever. But because I really do like McMillan, I understand why some fans don't like him. He does lack a little bit of adjusting because I don't know if it's he believes so hard that up in his mind that his sets will work in the end or whatever, but I definitely agree we need to bring in kind of an offensive type guy because I love also our assistant, like Bill Bano, Popeye Jones, and
Dan Burke.
Excuse me, that's my soda talking. But I love our three assistants, but they're all so just, and I think that's why they work with McMillan so well, is because they're all, defensive oriented and preach defense, and that's where their specialties lie. So I'm not saying fire anyone, but if we can maybe bring in someone, like, I don't know what,
like a Becky Lynch, but
there's
no way you're pulling away
like a title that you would create. It wouldn't, like, some form of assistant, offensive assistant.
I think it needs to be an assistant coach. Even I think it needs to be like second highest up.
Okay.
I think they need to have two heads, but that could also work poorly because then you have, which coach do you believe? Do you believe the offensive guy?
Yeah, they could butt heads, and we'll see where that goes. But I want to get into just a little bit of just talk about some of our favorite moments from this past year. Because, like I said, the Pacers, they finished 48-34, same record, close to basically without Vic. And credit to everyone, the entire team for just hunkering down and rallying around that and being able to come together and hold on to the 5 seed and make a valiant playoff effort against Boston Celtics, but fell short. But Dylan, if you had to just give a few of your favorite, I guess, moments from this past year, what would they be?
I think my two favorite moments, that's probably going to be the most common, but I really did enjoy the 2 game winners we had this season. The one of Oladipo against Boston and the Wesley Matthews against OKC, both against very, very good opponents. Both really showed off why the Bankers Life is such a tough place to win, and it showed the energy and the passion that this team had. I like seeing Wesley Matthews come in and immediately have that kind of emotion with him. It was fun to see, fun to watch. And then, obviously, the Oladipo, I don't think he can go a season without a game winner now. I fully expect one against a decent opponent next year. So, and it was just fun to see. Those game winners are hard to come by in season, so it was fun to see those two, especially this season. So
yeah, mine is obvious. It's the Boston one since I was there. It was by far, I think, the best NBA game I've been to in my life. It was truly like a playoff atmosphere. And granted, we had Vicks, and we were competing against a top team that basically no one gave us a shot against again.
Yeah.
And Vic just did what he did and pulled up for 3 and was able to bank it in, and Banker's Life went nuts. Like you said, it truly shows why the Pacers are just such kind of a collective unit. The reaction, I also like some of just the reactions from the bench this year when, I know, because I don't know if you've seen it yet, but they tweeted out, the Pacers did, Vic was at the game to Miles' dunk, and Vic was about to have a heart attack. It seemed like when Miles put Gordon Hayward on that poster, but that was just really cool to see. The camaraderie from this team is, I think, I'm not going to say second to none, but it's definitely up there in terms of team chemistry, and that's why this offseason is going to be so important, because like you mentioned, we're not going to really talk about it today. We're going to save that for next week when we do our free agency episode, but just bringing some of these guys back, like the Kojos, the Thad Youngs, the Bojans, who I've read is kind of the Pacers' top priority right now as free agency hits, and then also kind of mixing in the young guys like Aaron Holiday. It's going to be interesting to see. But yeah, that was probably my favorite moment, was by far the Boston game. So we're going to have to we did favorite moment, so we're going to have to, and I think it's probably going to be pretty obvious for Pacers fans, but I think I speak for maybe both of us when I say the moment we hated the most was seeing Vic go down. I mean, I don't think there's a more...
I know, I was like...
There's not a moment more, worse moment that I can think of by any means.
Yeah.
No loss. Yeah, Pacers they lost on, I think, that stupid heartbreaker to Cleveland. I think earlier this year when Vic got pulled down, they didn't call. But just losing Vic was... I didn't... And we brought this up when... I think there was a show after he got hurt. As we've seen Vic in these past few years just make so many athletic plays, athletic layups, dunks, passes, whatnot, and he falls to the ground and it seems to get up no matter what.
Yeah.
And when he didn't get up, Pacers fans knew that something was obviously not right.
Yeah.
And it sucked watching him go down. But I think probably maybe the favorite to win comeback player of the year next year, probably.
Yeah, I would say.
But I remember. Do you remember what you? I can't remember what I was doing when I think I was at work, and
yeah, I know,
you may have been.
I texted you.
Yeah, my phone was blowing up and I was like, oh, he probably just tweaked his knee. He'll be out a few games. No, it was unfortunate to watch him go down, but...
I remember getting the notification on my phone, and I looked on Twitter, and I saw the video. I was like, oh, that doesn't look that serious. Because when you watch it, it's like, oh, He just looks like he fell on his knee a little bit. But And then they came out the next day, and it says ruptured quad or whatever, and out for the year. And I was like, of course. I was like, this is just PG all over again. And I was like, we can't catch a break. And I was like, and most of my teams end up not catching a break. So I was like, this is just typical of my fandom. But yeah, it sucks to see Victor go down. It was we had such a promising season to that point.
Yeah. We
had solidly third in the East, and it looked like we could potentially catch up to Toronto and Milwaukee, but we'll never know. I mean, we at least looked like a solid 3 spot, which we would then be playing the Nets. So
and what credit to the Nets, they're giving it to. They're literally not going down without a fight.
But I do believe that we would have been a better matchup than the Philly because we could have rotated with their bench.
Yeah.
But I mean, again, we never would have known. But
I am wholeheartedly believe if Vic doesn't go down, we get the 3 seed.
Yeah.
I think Philly is highly overrated. It's just my personal preference, or not my belief, not preference, but belief on Philly. Just there's a reason they had to trade for Jimmy Butler, because in my opinion, Ben Simmons. Or
Tobias Harris.
Yeah, and Tobias Harris, because Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid in my mind haven't closed games. So, and then Boston, I think we would have held them off because they still, it's the playoffs and they're starting to click and everything, but they did still have kind of a tumultuous kind of regular season, and
they really didn't live up to their potential.
Yeah, and I think the Pacers would have easily had that 3 seed if Vic didn't go down. But you know what? You can't play the the what if type of game. But it was just like we kind of talked about. It was basically that's our obvious choice for worst moment of the year. So kind of want to do a little bit since this will be our second to last episode. So and we're going to be spending. I'll give you a little bit of insight next week. We're going to have Tony East on talking NBA or not NBA free agency and Pacers free agency as it specifically goes. Probably just going to dive through each of the Pacers' 7 free agents and talk about who we want back and stuff like that. But kind of just want to close the show maybe with like a little bit of our impromptu awards, I guess. So Pacers, we'll start with, because you brought up Miles Turner earlier, Pacers MVP, who would... I know my choice.
My choice is kind of like a flip of the coin between Bojan and Miles, but I think I'm going to give it to Bojan just because he burdened so much of the scoring load once Oladipo went down. I think you can also put Thad in the conversation, but I think Thad was more of a glue guy than an MVP guy. There was a point when during the season, I think this stretch in December against Washington, Milwaukee, and Philly, where Thad Young was just insane and had that Eastern Conference Player of the Week. Yeah. But I think Bojan deserves team MVP again this year. I think he's just such a good offensive player. It just sucks that once Oladipo went down, he just got so much of the focus defensively against teams, which kind of hurt his performance towards the end of the season. But I think Bojan is the one who deserves Pacers MVP.
With the improvement of Miles Turner, it's kind of made the decision a little harder, but Bojan, what he did after Vic went down was just remarkable. The biggest thing that I saw from Bojan this year was we knew he was a shooter. We knew he could shoot the 3 well and stretch the floor just fine. I didn't know he could really, and credit, I think he worked on this in the offseason a lot. His ability just to put the ball on the floor and just go head down to the rim, draw contact, get to the foul line where he's, believe, like an 80% free throw shooter, so he'll knock down his foul shots. But his ability to, just pass and put the ball on the floor and kind of be that leader out there when he's only had, I think, like 4 or 5 years in the NBA, because
I think he's like 27.
I think he's going to be 30.
Oh, okay.
But that's because he played overseas, I think, for a little bit. But he's still got a lot left in the tank in terms of NBA-wise. So
I don't think his game warrants anything that would wear down his play at all. So.
No, because he already has that. He's a shooter first.
Yeah.
So he already has that part of his game down. So next, we can do... I really don't...
Rookie of the Year.
Yeah. But, it's...
I almost want to give it to Alize Johnson for his G League performances.
Speaking of, we can touch on that. Alize Johnson, or Alize. They say Alize. I'm not sure what the actual pronunciation is. I trust Quentin Buckner and Chris Denari, and probably we're just pronouncing it wrong, or however Alize or however the heck they pronounce it. But what he did in Fort Wayne this year, I'm really looking forward to what he can do, because we knew he could score and rebound, but just for the fact that he's doing it in the G League is because we knew he could do it in college against some undersized type of guys, but he just reading out his stat line, he's had, in 31 games, he started all 31, 19 points. He was shooting 38% from 3, which we did not know that he could really do that much. He shot around 74-75% from the foul line, had 13 and a half boards per game. And
I would like to see him get some minutes in next year.
I would too.
I want to see him get like almost Leaf minutes.
Yeah. Just at the fact that he's averaging 13 and a half boards at 6'9".
Yeah.
Is remarkable. I know he's a guy that we both would like to kind of see. Excuse me, that is my soda's trying to talk to me. But it's because I really liked, especially the last game against Atlanta, when we got to see extended minutes from him, Edmund Sumner, who I'm really looking forward to watching as well. I think he has a team option.
I think his contract's coming up too, yeah.
He's one of those 7 guys that the Pacers have to make a decision on. So, But it's just the youth of talent that the Pacers have, because TJ played well this year. Edmund Sumner showed what he can do, and obviously Alize balling out with the Summer League. And I know he'll play probably some more in the G League, and we'll get to see, hopefully, what he can do. And I would like to think that he would make the actual NBA roster next year and be able to, play sparingly. We'll see what the roster looks like, because Nate McMillan did the one thing he did hint at after his post-game press conference was we could look very different next year, and that's most definitely the case. So we'll see where that goes, but I guess we have some time, so we'll go around the league and talk just what you want to do, your award predictions.
Oh, for all of NBA?
Sure, we can. Might as well. We have some time to do it. We'll start with. We'll do 6th man of the year, I guess. As much as I would like to give it to Sabonis,
I want to give it to Lou Williams.
But yeah, it's Lou Williams' award.
Especially if they count playoffs.
Yeah. Can we just name it the Lou Williams Award?
Yeah, Lou Williams / Eric Gordon Award.
Yeah, because it's basically them. Each year. Granted, they do. I think Lou Williams just set the all-time record for points off the bench, I think. Breaking, I was watching the Warriors game before I came over, and I think they said that he broke it last game or something like that. So.
I wouldn't be surprised that man lives off the bench.
Hey, credit to him for not, demanding a starting, because he could easily go somewhere and start.
Yeah, exactly.
But no matter where he goes, he's like, no, I'll come off the bench. It's fine, and you love to have a guy like that on your team. Next, we'll do Coach of the Year.
I want to give it to Budenholzer in Milwaukee. I think what he did with Milwaukee is something that I didn't really expect, especially with almost having the best record in the NBA. I think that was very impressive with Milwaukee, but you disagree very heavily.
I disagree very heavily, and it's just for the fact that I understand, I'd probably give it to Mike Malone with Denver, just because with Mike D'Antoni and Mike Budenholzer, they both have, I'm not saying they have it easier, because Mike D'Antoni is with James Harden and Budenholzer's with Giannis, but they make their jobs a lot easier. You can hand the ball off to, Budenholzer, granted, he's been a hell of a coach in Atlanta and now in Milwaukee, so wouldn't be surprised if he wins it, but Mike Malone, I did not expect Denver I expected them to maybe finish 5 or 6.
Yeah.
Right in the middle of the pack in the West. I did not expect them to come out and get the 2 seed. They have what Mike Malone has really done is impressive to me. We'll move to what we've done. Coach of the year.
We have most improved, MVP, DPOI, and
we'll do most improved. I want to switch to most improved, and I'm gonna give it. I'm being a homer. I'm giving it to D'Angelo Russell. I know that along with him.
I'm going to give it to Siakam.
Yeah, I have a feeling it's going to go to Pascal Siakam, and I have no problem giving it to him, but I'm just being... my Ohio State bias is showing with giving it to D'Angelo Russell, but Pascal Siakam that kid's going to be a superstar.
Yeah, I agree.
He's leading Toronto, and you could say he's been the leader in the playoffs and not Kawhi.
Yeah.
And what he has done is...
He's been just in a mismatch against the Magic. They really have no one that can really match up against him.
And his ability to, just stretch the floor, rebound, and score at a high rate. And I think he hasn't been playing basketball all that long. I can't remember what they've been saying, but he's an incredible story. So it'll probably go to Siakam, so most improved.
I also agree. D'Angelo has been very vastly improved this season.
Yeah, I just like to see him finally now running his own team, because in LA the star being drafted, I think number 2 overall, all the pressure was on him to kind of perform, and the whole scandal with Nick Young and everything, and just kind of derailed his career in LA. And now that he's in Brooklyn, he's showing what he can do, and I'm really proud to see him, finally succeed as he is. So we'll shift now to Defensive Player of the Year. I'm not really trying to be biased when I say I'm giving it to Miles Turner, but I know he's probably not going to win it. I've heard basically no one giving him love for it.
Yeah, I've heard it's pretty much just Rudy Gobert at this point.
I don't see how. I like Rudy Gobert. I think he's a really good defender. I just don't see how you ignore Miles Turner, or at least give him love for Defensive Player of the Year. Who would you give it to? I've heard Paul George. I've heard Giannis. I've heard Rudy Gobert. I've even heard, I think Stephen A. mentioned Draymond Green, which obviously those are all the kind of like likely names.
In my opinion, I know that this doesn't really play a factor, especially because I don't think they count the playoffs.
I don't think they do.
But I would really like to see Beverly or Kojo even get nominated for it, just because they don't get stats for it. They don't get the steals. They don't get the blocks. Right. But Beverly and Kojo can really just shut down a player that they're guarded against. And I think if you think what a Defensive Player of the Year goes to, I think you give it to Beverly, a guy who his sole purpose is just to shut down the best defender on the opposing team. So I personally want it to go towards Beverly, but I know it'll probably go either to Gobert or PG if I had to guess, logistically.
Yeah, just Miles leading the league in blocks. It's just...
I mean, you could say the same thing with PG, who leads the league in steals. So.
Yeah, but the Pacers, Miles is the best... trying to make a case for Miles. The best defender on a top 2 or 3 the Pacers had it statistically, I think, I know they had a top 5 defense in the regular season. He's like I said, the best defender, just league leader in shot blocks for a reason. I would like to see him get it. I know he's probably not going to, which sucks for him because I think he could easily... It wouldn't surprise me if he could average 3 blocks per game.
Yeah.
Maybe stay a little bit more healthy, and avoid, kind of foul trouble here and there, but averaging, I think, around 2.7 something blocks per game.
Yeah, I think it's around that range.
And it was just ridiculous to see this year. So we have that. What's left? Just MVP?
I think MVP, there's Comeback Player of the Year, but I think that's Gordon Hayward.
Yeah, Comeback Player is easily Gordon Hayward.
Or DeMarcus Cousins, but I don't know.
Well,
he only played half a year, so I think it'd be Gordon Hayward.
Yeah, Gordon Hayward for Comeback Player of the Year. And then MVP, I'll let you. I
I know it's going to be James Harden. Like, it's just all but determined at this point.
From what I've been hearing, I don't think it is, but I mean
it's going to be him or Giannis.
Yeah,
I think.
It's a two-horse race.
I really don't know anybody else who could potentially unseat those two. I'm trying to think if
PG is
I don't even think
only.
PG.
That's the only other like big name I've been hearing.
Okay, yeah, I think it's Giannis. I just think the way Giannis is playing has just been absurd. Granted, I do like James Harden, but I think he had a step down in terms of team success, which I think will play a little bit of a factor into it, which I think will give it to Giannis, because Giannis just he's just a freak of nature.
Yeah, there's a reason he's called the Greek Freak.
Yeah.
So I'm giving it James Harden though. I know, thank God, it's not a postseason award, because last night would have definitely not helped his case. Yeah. But
it's still impressive to go 0-15 from the floor and still win, especially in Utah.
Yeah, and he did hit I think the game like ceiling 3 or whatever. Yeah. But I don't think we've seen this dominant of a scorer in quite a while.
Yeah.
He does some. I think his step back is a travel. I think his step back, it should be a travel and an offensive foul, because he pushes off. If you want to watch a real step back, in my opinion,
there's offensive fouls all over the NBA.
I understand that. But if you want to watch a real step back, watch Kemba Walker.
Yeah.
But he makes just ridiculous shots with hands in his face. I don't think I've seen. The only person I can maybe compare that to is kind of Kevin Durant.
Yeah.
Kind of just being able to, no matter who's on you, be able to score. Ability to get to the free throw line. His defense has improved, so there is that. And just the string of 30-point games he put together this year. I think he averaged like 36, 37. Almost averaging 40 a game.
Yeah.
Is just ridiculous. There's no wrong answer with Giannis or James Harden. It's going to go down to one of those two guys. I hate how the NBA, though, does. We're not going to know until I think.
It's like the mid-June.
Yeah, I think it's before the finals
start.
So I hate the way the NBA has done it now. And especially since they don't include the postseason, they just keep everyone in suspense.
Yeah, I figure you just give it away during that 2 or 3 day break before the playoffs start.
You would think. That's the way they used to do it.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. So that's all the time that we're going to have for today's episode. We'll be back, like we said, next week with our last episode of the year, talking free agency, because Kevin Pritchard and Chad Buchanan, Nate McMillan, they have a lot of decisions to make. And like I said, we'll be joined by I call him the Pacers financial guru, known as Tony East. So be sure to tune in for that. But like Pacers, their season, like we said, unfortunately ended today. But that means the off season begins. That means getting Vic back healthy, and everything, and prepping for the off season, draft, and all that kind of stuff. But until next week, when we talk about free agency, and then we'll just leave it there for today. So for Dylan Deanhart, I'm Cody Emerson. Go Pacers.